Hello, welcome once again to Leto's Law. I'm Steve Leto. Michael sent me a story out of Utah, and the headline says it all. Utah restaurant owner appears to spray cigarette smoker in face with fire extinguisher. This is from Fox News by Bradford Betts, the story I'm reading to you. A Utah restaurant owner was captured on video Friday, appearing to spray a fire extinguisher in the face of a smoker that he thought was within 25 feet of his business. The incident was recorded around 5:30 p.m. near the Gallivan Center in Salt Lake City. In the video, restaurant owner Alex Jamison could be seen holding a fire extinguisher while he argued with two men, one of whom was smoking. And the argument was over whether or not these people were within 25 feet of the business. A woman's voice off camera asks, "Are you really going to spray him with a fire extinguisher?" Jamison said, "I'm going to put that cigarette out. You can't smoke right here." The man with whom Jamison primarily had been arguing appeared to put a lit cigarette in his mouth and said, "Do it." Jamison then appeared to spray the fire extinguisher in the man's face. Someone could be heard saying, "Call the cops." Jamison later told a TV station, "Well, I'll say that I'm not proud of my behavior. I let myself get egged on and I overreacted. I'm a protective small business owner who has asked hundreds of people not to smoke near our patio in the interest of our customers and our neighbors' customers." Jamison said he'd asked the smoker multiple times that day to go to the designated smoking area, but should not have reacted to feeling disrespected. The smoker, who's been identified as John Bird, said he was experiencing shortness of breath and headaches from the chemicals he inhaled, presumably from the fire extinguisher, not from the cigarette. Who in their right mind puts a fire extinguisher a foot and a half away from someone's face and just lets go, he asked. The Salt Lake City Police Department said it was investigating the incident. There are several issues that arise here, not the least of which is some people are going to say, good. Guy got what he deserved. Well, keep in mind that if there's a law that says you can't do something, the law doesn't always say, oh, and by the way, anyone can enforce this law. So if someone is smoking within 25 feet of your business, you can go over and ask them to leave. But if they break the law, are you law enforcement? Does it say in the law that you can blast them with a fire extinguisher? Why not take a sledgehammer to the cigarette? Put it out that way. Obviously, if there's a law, there's people who enforce the laws. Call the police. Now, you might say, Steve, the police aren't going to respond to a cigarette smoking complaint. No, but a lot of malls have got people walking around like security guards and so on. Maybe they'll get involved. Have you asked them? And if there's a problem with this, maybe they'll get involved. But the answer is not self-help. In fact, I had a law professor who had us repeat the mantra, self-help is fraught with peril. You are treading on dangerous ground when you decide to enforce the laws on your own. And a lot of people actually think that, well, once someone breaks the law, all bets are off. You can do anything you want to that person. No, not at all. No. Person's got rights, So if you look at this, there were two wrongs. You don't make it right, but there's two wrongs. One guy smoked within 25 feet of a restaurant. Assuming that that's the case, there's probably a penalty for that. The other guy probably committed an assault and battery and possibly an aggravated assault and battery. I'm not sure about the law in Utah. I'm not going to get into that. But the point is that when you blast somebody in the face with a fire extinguisher from that far away, it's probably assault and battery. And that's a crime. Okay, so might have one crime over here, might have another crime over here. It's possible that both of them committed crimes. Okay? And then the question is, which crime is worse and what happens as a result and so on with respect to enforcement of that law regarding that crime. So one of the interesting things about the video, I watched it, and you can find it. It's very easy to find. Just look up Utah cigarette fire extinguisher. I'm sure you'll find it. But the point is that if I was the business owner, the first thing I would do is I would take a tape measure out and measure off all the spots, and I'd actually mark the spots somehow. It'd be possibly it wouldn't be a circle because the main point is not a point. It's actually probably a square or a rectangle. But the second thing is that you then talk to people who run the mall. If they have security guards, say, could you please, shoo people away who are smoking in these spots because they're breaking the law and it's annoying to customers. But thirdly, you don't actually go out to the fire extinguisher and blast the guy in the face. Now, my smarter audience members caught something in the middle of that story. And that is when the guy said, I'm going to put that cigarette out. You can't smoke right here. The man with whom Jamison had been arguing appeared to put a lit cigarette in his mouth and said, do it. And the question is, when he says do it, is he giving the other guy permission to blast him with a fire extinguisher? Interesting point. Because if I consent to it, is it still an assault and battery? And of course, the attorneys in the audience are going to tell you that they agree with me on this one. You cannot consent to an assault and battery. Otherwise, I'd punch you in the face. And when you called the cops, I'd go, he asked me to. He wanted me to punch him in the face. And so it's considered to be against public policy to say that you can consent to an assault and battery of that sort. So the idea that the guy said, do it, it's trust me, if I was arguing this case in front of a judge or a jury, I'd bring that up and say that that was one of the factors that mitigates here, that would actually, it's kind of like egging somebody on, which I think is the phrase he used. And yes, sometimes the fact you got egged on might come into play on some aspects, possibly in the sentencing. But is it going to absolve him of blasting the guy in the face with the fire extinguisher? And most courts are going to say, no, it does not. No, it does not. So the interesting point, like I said, is the guy's breaking the law. What are your rights or your remedies or what's available to you to make the guy stop? Unless you are law enforcement, it's not your job. Now, it impacts this man's business. I feel for the guy. I don't smoke. I've never smoked. I have very, very few acquaintances who smoke. And as a result of that, I'm not around cigarette smoke very often. And when I am, it annoys me. I'm not going to go up to a stranger and go, hey, would you stop smoking? And I never have. But the point is that cigarette smoke aggravates me. So if I was in a restaurant and somebody's 10 feet away from me smoking and it's drifting over towards me, that would bother me. But again, whose job is it to make that person stop smoking? And so I understand the angst that the restaurant owner feels when he goes out there and he's inspired to say, excuse me, you're within 25 feet. Could you please back? I understand that. I've got no problem with him going out and saying that. But carrying the fire extinguisher out like it's a weapon and then saying, I'm going to blast you with this if you keep smoking, and then actually blasting somebody in the face because they kept smoking, it's a step over the line. So that's it. But again, the Utah restaurant owner who appears to have sprayed a cigarette smoker in the face with a fire extinguisher, watch the video, and it does appear he did that. I'll be curious to see if he gets charged with anything or if there's any fallout from this. Because there's two things that could happen here, obviously. One is there could be a criminal complaint filed against the restaurant owner for the assault and battery. And then there's also the possibility of a lawsuit, because there's a civil action in most states where you can sue somebody who assaults and or batters you. And that lawsuit's probably a bigger concern, because I suspect that if you went to court on this, and if the guy's got a clean record and he hasn't been attacking people before, chances are the court's going to go, you know something, it's an isolated incident, very, very strange set of facts, and if it hadn't been filmed, nobody would care, might not be that much to it. But the lawsuit might be a bigger deal. And that, of course, involves money, which no one wants to spend. So there you go. That's the story. If I see an update, I will pass it along. Otherwise, questions or comments, put them below. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.